Thanks. Democrat Mark Scheffler's run for Congress will continue after a unanimous decision today by the Wisconsin Elections Commission to keep his name on the ballot.
Scheffler was facing a couple of challenges here that would have struck a number of the signatures collected by his campaign over legalities. Chief political reporter Jason Zimmerman has been following the story, joins us now live in the newsroom with a First Alert update. Jason.
Chris, those challenges were filed by a member of the Republican Party of Brown County and also by one of Scheffler's opponents in the August primary, Rick Crossan. According to paperwork filed by Crossan, Scheffler's campaign failed to use the proper forms to collect signatures required under Wisconsin Act 126, which took effect in late March. It basically requires those collecting signatures to be qualified electors of Wisconsin and to certify that eligibility on the petition form. 1,000 ballot signatures are needed to be on the ballot for a congressional race. Scheffler was found to have just over 1,300. Crossan also accused Scheffler of citing the August 11th primary as the election date instead of November 3rd. The other complaint, filed by a person with ties to the Republican Party of Brown County, made similar allegations. A short time ago, Scheffler responded to the vote by the commission, which was unanimous.
They confirmed what we knew from the start, that we have a rightful place on the ballot and that everything that we had done to get more than 1,300 signatures was perfectly allowable under the law. We deserve a chance to be on the ballot.
I did reach out to Rick Crossan, who tells me he respects this decision by the Wisconsin Elections Commission and is looking forward to the campaign heading into August 11th. Chris, back to you.